the Evaluation Couch with Maria Montenegro. Last week, I reconnected with a student that was doing her practicum in my department a few months ago. And she asked me to participate in an interview for one of her leadership development classes. And one of the questions she asked me was, at what point or in what moment did I realize the type of leader that I wanted to become? And the answer that I gave was that I realized the type of leader I wanted to become when I was in a previous job where I didn't see good leadership being role modeled around me. This question stayed with me, and it made me reflect over the weekend about the role that this bad experience played in shaping my career journey, who I am today, and my learning. So in this episode, I want to share what I learned in my bad job experience. I'm hoping that by sharing this, I inspire anyone who might be going through a hard time, whether right now or if you have had a bad experience in the past that you haven't fully healed from. And I want to talk about this because I think bad experiences can play a huge role in shaping our journey and who we become. I believe that if we're open and if we are intentional, we can learn from all experiences that we have in our career. And sometimes the most challenging experiences are the ones that are the most rich in terms of the opportunities for us to learn about ourselves, about the workplaces where we thrive, about the areas where we can improve, and about people and how we interact with them. As I was reflecting about my learnings, one thing that kept coming up in my mind was the importance of reframing what we live, so that instead of portraying ourselves and seeing ourselves as the victims of a situation, we see ourselves as empowered people who are learning from a situation, who can reflect on the role that they played in this situation happening, and who ultimately can move on from this experience. One thing that I do want to share before going into the details of this is that this does not apply for anyone who is experiencing a workplace situation where their human rights are not being respected. If that is happening to you, I do urge you to seek support and to see what options are available for you. But I do not recommend following any of the steps or suggestions that I share in this episode. Another thing that I want to acknowledge is that sometimes we are in a position where we can choose where to work, who to work with, what type of work aligns with our goals and interests. And other times we cannot. Other times we really have to do what we have to do in order to pay our bills and to meet our needs. Regardless of in which of those two situations you are in right now, learning from a bad job experience can help you grow and learn and prepare for the future where hopefully you do have choices. So with that said, what I'm going to do is share the learnings that I had from my bad job experience. I'm going to give a little bit of context, and then I'm going to share with you how I have reframed that specific learning for my career in the future. The first one is, it is dangerous to idolize a company. In this particular bad job experience, I joined a company that I 100% idolized. In my mind, this organization was the best place where I could ever work in. However, now I can see that this belief was based on a very limited amount of information and public information that I had of this organization. My expectations were extremely high, and I inflated them. And when your expectations are high, and you're basing those expectations on limited information, that is a recipe for being disappointed. I remember when I got this job that I described it as my dream job. I looked up to this organization so much. In the future, this is how I'm reframing if I'm ever in a situation where I get a job or I'm applying for a job where I really, really want to work. I want to recognize the success and that it says a lot that I was offered a position in that company. And while I'm doing that, I'm also going to recognize the value that I am bringing into that position and into that organization. I'm going to highlight when I'm describing it, when I'm sharing the news with people in my life, that accepting a job is accepting an exchange. And as much as I am very fortunate to work for that organization, they're very fortunate to have me as well. Learning number 2 is that the hiring process is a two-way street. And I know that this is something that you've probably all heard, how important it is that you ask questions that are important to you in that interview process. But one thing that I was reflecting on is, oftentimes within an interview, we have about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, to ask questions to the people that are interviewing us. That is not really a lot of time to have an honest discussion to give you enough information about the workplace that you are interviewing for. How I am reframing this in the future is, I really want this job. It sounds like a great opportunity for me. Now I need to validate the information that I have, and I need to validate whether this opportunity aligns with my values, my goals, and my interests. And there's a few ways in which you can do that beyond that 1 hour interview that oftentimes we have. One thing that I'm going to try in the future is reaching out to people that work or have worked in that organization before and getting to learn about their experiences in the workplace. Learning number 3 is that documentation is key. And with this, what I'm talking about is sending emails or messages over Teams, Slack, whatever it is that your organization uses, after you have a conversation, especially if the conversation is about your performance, your career growth, the asks of what you need from your supervisors. I noticed that in this particular bad job experience, I had many conversations about what I needed, about my performance, about the growth path that was available for me. Looking back, I realized that I took at face value the words that were being exchanged in those conversations. Now I realize that I should have documented them, and I should have sent perhaps an email after having those conversations saying, I just want to recap what we just discussed. I think in the past I've had resistance towards doing this, so I've needed to reframe the documentation. And the reframing is the documenting allows for clarity. It helps people go back to a conversation, make sure that everyone is on the same page. And it also helps keep a record because over time, people might easily forget about a conversation that was had. So now my reframing is documentation is a tool for effective communication and clarity. My learning number 4 is that challenging experiences can provide clarity on your values. And having clarity on your values is so important to understand how you move around the world, what motivates you, what drives your decisions, and ultimately what drives your work satisfaction. And values evolve as we grow. So even if we had a bad job experience earlier in our career that really clarified our values, this might change a few years later. It will change as you grow, as you have more experiences, as your conditions change. And the importance of knowing your values is that values are associated with your engagement at work and your satisfaction at work. Being in a situation where your values are not aligned can be very difficult, especially if it feels like it is a permanent situation. So the way that I have learned to reframe that experience where my values were compromised is to look back at it and acknowledge that that experience was challenging, but it helped clarify what values are most important for me. And with this information now, when I make future choices, especially around my career, I have more information about what is important for me and what are the things that I don't want to compromise on. Learning number 5 is that not everyone in a position of power is a leader. There are a lot of supervisors, managers, even directors, CEOs, people who reach positions of power, but they do not necessarily have strong leadership skills and they do not necessarily know how to manage people. Making this distinction has been very important for me. I think we cannot take for granted or assume that the person that we report to is necessarily going to be a leader that you can look up to. Ideally, they are, but in reality, this doesn't always happen. I have found that it's very helpful to identify who are the people and the leaders that you really admire. And if you happen to be reporting to a person who doesn't necessarily have that, I think that is okay. You can work with that. It can help you navigate their advice. It can help you understand why you might or might not be receiving the support that you need. And it can also be an indication and a motivation for you to find leaders outside your work or outside your direct reporting structure. I have reframed this like this. Supervisors and people in power positions are not necessarily trained to be strong leaders. They're not necessarily going to be invested in my growth as a person. or as a professional, beyond ensuring that I complete my work. And this is not personal, but it is important to know so that I can know what I'm dealing with. My learning number 6 is that you are your best and sometimes your only advocate. This is a little bit linked to the learning before with regards to reporting to someone who's not necessarily a leader or a people manager. In my particular bad job experience, I actually had a very nice and great relationship with my supervisors. And because of this, I think I assumed that they would advocate for me, that they would advocate for me to be fairly recognized, for me to have the opportunities for growth that I needed at that point in my career. But now I can identify several instances where I could have been more assertive, where I could have communicated my needs earlier and in a clearer way. I think it's important to recognize that the people that we report to, our supervisors and our managers, are navigating multiple things in their job. They're not just there providing support for us. They're navigating politics in an organizational setting. They're navigating different priorities. They have other people that report to them too and that they are also supporting. So the clearer you are about what you need, the sooner you communicate that, the better it is for them as well to know how to support you. My reframing around this is no one has to guess or assume what I need. I need to communicate this and I need to advocate for myself. And my last learning from my bad job experience is that moving on is an act of resiliency. I think there can be this misconception that quitting is an act of weakness, of leaving because you didn't get your way. But actually, quitting is also hard. Putting in the work to find a different job, to go through an interview process, especially when you're going through a challenging situation, takes a lot of effort. It is also a risk to accept a job in an organization that you're not familiar with. Sometimes a situation can be so bad that your choice is to have no job at all, which also is a risk and takes a lot of courage to do. So the way that I have reframed this for myself and for other people that have shared that they're leaving a bad job experience is that leaving a bad job is an act of resiliency and an act of self-love. This episode has been a good exercise for me to heal from the job experience that I had. So if you're in a similar situation, or if you know someone who is, here are some of the tips to reframe a bad job experience and to learn from it. The first one is to take time to reflect on what's happening. Even if it's hard, even if you have a lot of things going on, carving out time in your day to just reflect and sit with what's happening is the first step towards intentional learning. While you're doing that, ask yourself what you can learn about yourself from this situation. Don't ignore your role in what's happening. Again, going back to reframing this experience from one of a victim to one of an empowered person who can learn from it. If through the process of your bad job experience you are receiving feedback, take the time to appreciate the feedback. Feedback is a gift, and it can really be an opportunity for you to learn. If you can, take the time to describe what you're experiencing, how you're handling it, and what you can do to improve in the future. Ideally, you're not going to have many bad job experiences, but you're always going to face challenges. And learning about how you're handling these challenging situations can be very handy in the future. And my last tip is to ask advice from someone that you admire, someone who has strong leadership skills. Remember that the person that you're reporting to and the people in power positions in your organizations are not necessarily going to be those people, and that is okay. But you can reach out. You can use your professional network. You can reach out to friends who you think are role models and have great leadership skills. Ask for support. Ask for what they would do or have done in the past in similar situations. It is okay to ask for support, and we can learn a lot from other people. Preparing for and recording this podcast has made me think a lot about Ariana Grande's song that she dedicates to all her ex-boyfriends. In the song, she says, "Thank you, next, and I'm so grateful for my ex." And that is how I feel towards my past job experience. I am grateful for the opportunity to document and share and own the learnings that I had from that experience. And I am so happy to look back and know that I've moved on and I'm in a better place. If you are in a similar situation, I encourage you to be optimistic. Take the time to learn from the experience. And I really hope that in the near future, you can look back and also feel very glad to have moved on from that situation.